Since 1963, when evolution became the state religion, all sorts of things have happened to our country. We covered this on video tape number 1 about what's happened in our country, how there's been a rise in sexually transmitted diseases, a rise in premarital sex, a rise in unwed birth rates, a decline in test scores. I mean, the thing goes on and on. What's happened in our country? Unmarried couples living together, now a 725% increase since early 60s. Divorce rates have gone crazy in this country. Our moral culture our fabric is unraveling. Violent crimes increased nearly 1,000%. SAT scores have plummeted. Kids are acting like animals.
What is up, guys, and welcome to my channel. And this video is going to be a little different. It's probably going to be one of the more important videos I've ever made in my life, and it's just talking about the easy thing, the super simple things that we can find in the world that will prove that the Bible and God is real and everything in the Bible is true, and that the leaders of our world are hiding God, and that they use science to mislead people, and that science actually proves the Bible true. But people never want to look into it because it will contradict their worldview. And some people say, I don't have a worldview. Yeah, you have a worldview. You have the mainstream worldview, buddy. And people don't want to believe that there's a creator, a God, because they don't want to be told what to do. And people always think that maybe Christianity is like a little bit strict and do this, do that, don't do that, don't do this. But if you look into it honestly, every rule that God gave us is not to make us submit to him, although submission is good to him, but it's not to make us submit or to make us controlled. It's to help us. So anything that God says is a law is actually there to protect us, not to hurt us. So if you go against his laws, you're not really fighting him, you're just hurting yourself. So there's so many things in the world that prove that God is real. And the modern definition of science is knowledge through study and testing. And nowadays these scientists, they're just theoretical. They just spout theoretical nonsense and jargon, and it's all, nothing can be proven. It's just refraction this, gravity that. And you know, I've discussed with people, and some people say, hey, you're not a scientist. We have people who are studying this science, and they've found this stuff out, and I'm going to tell them no, they're wrong, because it's all controlled, and you wouldn't get very far in the field if you were going against the flow, right? So let me show you super easily that the Bible is true, and all the evidence that is follow along. So the first one I'm going to show you guys is in the ancient Chinese language. Ancient Chinese. They don't use this anymore. So in the Chinese language, they use these pictograms that are formed with caricatures, and each of these characters have a different meaning. And if you combine these characters together, they will form a word. But each character has a different meaning. So let's look at the ancient Chinese caricature for garden. So it is made up of 5 different this pictogram is made of 5 different caricatures, and each one has a different meaning, and I'm going to read them to you. So the first one is dust. Interesting. Breath is the second. Third is 2 persons. Third is enclosure. And the fifth is the actual meaning, which those 4 combine into, and that is garden. So those 4 caricatures will create that pictogram equaling garden. So isn't that interesting? Dust, breath, 2 persons, enclosure. That sounds like the Garden of Eden creation. But how could biblical teaching be involved in ancient Chinese? Did you know that the ancient Chinese, scientists don't know where the first dynasty came from? They just apparently appeared out of nowhere with knowledge and ability to create and to build. And they had knowledge of mathematics, architecture. So no one knows where the first dynasty came from. Where did this guy come from? The emperor? Who is this guy? And I believe he was one of the sons from Noah's Ark. And I believe it was Shem, and he led his portion of the family, because after the flood, there was a worldwide flood that affected everyone, and every culture recorded this worldwide flood. But modern science wants to tell you that it was a localized flood and that all of these stories are blown out of proportion. And I disagree with that because science proves them wrong. And again, we can see that if you study the Bible, you will know that in the Garden of Eden, God created Adam and Eve, the first two people, with his breath out of dust in the enclosure that is the Garden of Eden. So that is a smoking gun. That proves that the biblical teaching is true. And you know what? After the flood, Noah, because Adam and Eve had a lot of children and they were already created, they were created from God. And if you want to say, God creating people out of nothing is like magical, well then, believing in the Big Bang and everything coming from a rock, because that's what everyone believes in, that the earth was a rock and it rained on the rocks and the rocks accumulated an ocean, and the ocean somehow got some bacteria or something and it became alive and it started growing and multiplying, and then these bacteria started growing into different larger, different species or whatever, different, and it started evolving, and then they somehow found a mate that had evolved the same way to accommodate its reproductive system, and they had kids, and this is how they want you to believe. That's more of a fairy tale. Okay, what's easier to believe, that the all-powerful God created everything, or that magical nonsense and water and bacteria created human beings? Okay, that will never happen. Okay, so Adam and Eve were super intelligent. They were actually a little larger than human beings, than us today, and they were actually actually 12 feet probably around, and they had extreme knowledge. They could create, they knew how to smelt metal, they knew how to build, they knew how to harvest, they knew the functions of plants. They had so much knowledge that we don't even know today, and they taught all mankind all this knowledge. And once the flood came, the family that survived were very smart, incredibly smart, and maybe not as smart as Adam and Eve, but they were incredibly intelligent, and they taught their children all this knowledge. So they were able to, once they multiplied, split off and start their own civilizations on their own because they had knowledge. Okay, so Shem traveled to Asia, and he's the one who populated Asia. So that is one of the proofs. That's just one of them. Okay, let's go. That's ancient Chinese language proves that. Okay, he was so smart. He said, let's incorporate the story of creation in our language. Okay, I'm going to talk about the worldwide flood and how there's so much evidence that there was a worldwide flood, and these scientists want to ignore this and always add time and as their answer. Why are there seashells on top of mountains? Why are there seashells on top of Mount Everest? Oh, because there used to be an ocean there and mountains were pushed up. Oh, okay. So they'll say anything to deny the word of God. There's tons of evidence that the earth was destroyed by a worldwide flood. And they even found Noah's Ark in Turkey, okay? They found it, and they've already analyzed it, and they said that it's very advanced. They said they used, for each plank of wood, they used 3 different boards of wood, and they actually sealed it with some kind of resin, and they actually knew how to make metal bolts, and they've uncovered it in Turkey. Okay, so if you want to look into it, look into it. If you don't want to, then that's fine. But I feel sorry for you, because in the end, you're gonna meet God, and you're gonna meet Him face to face, and you're gonna be on your knees begging for forgiveness. But it'll be too late. Okay, the guy named Ron Wyatt. He was the guy who went around looking for biblical sites, looking for the ancient sites in the Bible, and he found them. Okay, he went to the famous site where Moses parted the Red Sea. And he dove under the water and found the actual chariot wheels from the Egyptians that chased the Hebrews through that pathway across that Dead Sea opening. And Ron White found Sodom, the famous city of Sodom and Gomorrah in the Bible, the famous city that was corrupted with perversion and sexual delinquency, and he found that it was filled with a brimstone. With Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed by sulfur, and brimstone. It was a very sinful city and it was destroyed by sulfur and fire. So he actually uncovered the city. He found it, and he found these mountains that look kind of like a structures, kind of like a man-made. So he kind of looked at the site and he found that this area is in the correct location that would be in the biblical era. And also he found that these structures actually contained sulfur balls in them. And these balls of sulfur were so pure, and they would burn blue when he actually lit them with a flame. In South Africa, one gentleman, he's found a footprint, a giant footprint, embedded in a stone. And it is about, 5 foot, 6 foot tall. And this is proving that about the giants that walked on the earth before in the old days, thousands of years ago. And I've heard tales of the Smithsonian Museum coming whenever someone dug up a giant. They would come and claim the site and just hide the bones. So there are thousands and thousands of bones hidden in the museums, and they don't want to talk about the giants that they found. And Ron Wyatt actually found the split rock of Horeb. So there was a rock that actually in the Bible, when Moses was leading his people across the land to the promised land, they were thirsty and they were in the middle of the desert, and he struck a rock and it started pouring out water. And they found this site where they could actually see where the water actually had eroded parts of the rock and parts of the stone around the path, and created kind of like a dried up stream path, right? And I just feel like there's so much evidence that proves that the Bible is true. And if you've studied into carbon dating, you'll see that carbon dating is very flawed. They've taken live snails and they've carbon dated their shells, and their shells are like 10,000 years old. Okay, and the snail's still alive. They've dated mammoths they found where the parts of the mammoth were different ages of the inside of the mammoth. Like, it's just nothing. But whenever it proves that the Earth's old, they're going to promote that. But whenever there's some kind of error in their data, they won't talk about it. And carbon dating, it measures the amount of carbon from the atmosphere, and measures scientists can measure the rate of decay of the carbon, or the amount of carbon in a deceased creature, right? In a deceased animal, because the animal eats plants or meat that has absorbed carbon in the previous era, and then we can measure that amount of carbon, which does I think it has half-life or something. It starts deteriorating. I might not be a little perfect on this, but I'm saying that it's inconsistent because scientists are assuming the amount of carbon in the atmosphere is the same as it was today. Like, they're assuming that the past amount of carbon is the same as it is today. So whatever they measure doesn't mean jack shit. Okay, so there's like tons of evidence that prove the Bible is true. And even the flat earth is proving the Bible true. And if there's tons of evidence of flat earth, and scientists just keep turning away from it. And I hope you guys will look into this deeper, because if you guys look deep for the truth, you'll find it. But if you guys don't want to know, right, then you'll never find it. All right, guys, God bless you. Thank you.